Hi, Maria.
Okay.
Yeah, you're live now.
Okay,
I
good, good.
know.
Yeah.
But so now what, Naomi?
Maybe go back later like you did the other one, or we can join it to another video.
Okay, I can go back later and re-record it. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, I did that again.
it's okay.
Um,
Change, that's why. Okay. Sorry, I only notice it now.
no, thank you for noticing.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we're live, um, so starting with the email that you received yesterday, there's a link in there to the paperwork that we're talking about in the lesson. So if you have it in front of you, you can go ahead and click on it and kind of see these worksheets. If not, you can pay attention and look at them later. But really, the first checkup that's in the packet, it's just asking you kind of to just think about how your child, kind of behaves, or what is their activity level, what is their ability to follow directions, thinking about their strengths, and what do they find challenging. Do they have a hard time kind of sitting still or following directions, or have a hard time changing from one activity to another? Is it difficult for them to nap or sleep? So just kind of checking in with what your impressions are of your child's strengths and some of their challenges. I think this is also a good thing to talk about with your partner or just other people that are important in your family that care for your child a lot, because first of all, they may behave differently. If you and your partner are in different homes, or if a child stays with grandma sometimes, they may behave differently in different environments. And then also, it's just kind of a conversation about how you perceive things really differently. So sometimes that can be the case. Maybe you think your child's really active and your partner is like, sometimes. So it kind of can show those different perceptions that you have of the child, and maybe those perceptions can affect behavior. So their ability to cooperate, their friendship patterns, and then just thinking about how your child communicates. So talking and verbal communication is really only one way of communicating. I know as adults, when we say communication, that's exactly what we think, is we think of talking, verbally exchanging information. But kids, especially from 0 to 5, well, they're just learning words, they're just learning to speak, they're just learning about conversation. And so they communicate definitely in other ways. One of them is behavior, but there's other ways that they can communicate with you, and maybe sometimes that are more comfortable for them. If they don't have the language, they don't have the words, they may be trying to communicate with you in other ways. So telling a story, sometimes we just think kids are making things up or being silly, and really what they're trying to do is tell you a story about something, I don't know, something that scared them at school. And they'd rather tell you a story about it when they're using their toys or their dolls, or they see something on TV, they want to tell a story about it, showing you what happened, drawing a picture, through play. Again, if you're playing with your child and you're taking that time to intentionally kind of sit with them and communicate, you might discover things. Certain things might come out that you're like, oh, that's an interesting piece of information. I didn't know that. And it's just a kind of a medium for them that makes them feel more comfortable. Or, does your child maybe not share that much information? Do you feel it's challenging to even communicate with them in any way? Or maybe you haven't tried different ways of communicating, and maybe verbally is just a challenge, but maybe trying other ways could help. And then just thinking about, how does your child like to learn? Do they like to do activities? Do they like to watch you do the activity? Do they like to try right away, and then be shown? Or they want to jump right in? Each kid is different, and kids have different temperaments. So you know your child best. And I think that this is just a tool to kind of give a quick scan of how they kind of interact. So with communication, in the packet, our goal is to establish a routine and give your child a special time to share information about preschool activities, or really share information about anything. And it really gives you a chance to kind of share with your child, and know about what they're successful with, and know what some of their challenges are. The more you're communicating, just the more information that you're going to get. And our activity cards, provide many ways and different kind of questions, prompting questions that you can share information about preschool, and that your child can focus on relating information about preschool activities and social situations. It just kind of provides that framework for that practicing those things. And then the tip cards are, which we're going to go over these later, provide suggestions for encouraging your child to share information. So it'll help your child know that you're interested in getting in what he or she is telling you. So I wanted to show you a quick video.
Communication with our children helps them develop positive communication with our children helps them develop in a healthy way and strengthens our bond with them.
Parents can really kind of tune into what their kids are saying to kind of build those communication skills, help their children build language skills by saying, what did you say, and repeating back what the kids said and reflecting on that emotion that kids are expressing.
There are 4 steps for communicating positively with your child. Step 1. Praise. Use praise to help your child know what you'd like them to do. Be clear and specific with your praise. Instead of, good job, say, good job putting away your toys.
Great job putting your toys away, Jenny. It's very, very important as a parent to be conscious as much as possible of what your kids are doing, but you're checking in on them enough that there's opportunities to acknowledge what they're doing, that it's good.
Step 2. Imitation. You can copy or imitate the things your child is doing that you want them to keep doing. This shows your child that you are paying attention to them and interested in what they are doing. When copying and imitating, make sure you do the things the way your child does. Do not try to do things better or faster than your child.
Then they see that you've recognized that they're doing something that you're also doing. Wow, mommy likes that. Mommy likes to play with my dolls too. So that must be something good that I'm doing. I'm going to do that again in the future.
Step 3. Description. Describing or talking about what your child is doing while they play shows your child you are noticing their good behavior. You can act like a sportscaster who is telling people what is happening in a game. You are putting the red block on the green block and making a tall tower. Step 4. Active listening. Giving your child your full attention when you are playing and talking with them can help build your relationship. At least once a day, try to really focus on being with your child. Try to decrease distractions like cell phones so you can give her your full attention. One way to actively listen is to talk about what your child is doing or to repeat what your child says. You can also add more detail to encourage them to talk to you more. For example, your child may say, "I colored it." But with active listening, you may add to that and say, "Yes, you colored her dress blue and red." Active listening can also help children name their feelings. For example, if your child is crying and says she's not happy, you may say, "You seem unhappy and sad." Playtime is a great time to practice praise, imitation, description, and active listening. You can also use these skills anytime you are with your child, at dinner, in the car, and when giving a bath.
Okay. So I wanted to write out just those things that were kind of briefly touched on in the video. But definitely last week we talked about praise. I know that sometimes that's kind of a trigger word. People don't like that word. If you don't like that word, you can think of it as just acknowledgement. Noticing your child doing something right. You don't have to think about it as this sort of external idea of praise. I think sometimes, again, that's a hot word that maybe people don't like to use. But really, noticing what your child is doing right just only builds confidence. And again, that connection between you and your child, that you're noticing, you're paying attention enough to notice that he or she is on task, that they're doing what you've asked them to do, and you're happy about it. They do want to make you happy. And that they definitely want that connection with you, and they're always seeking it. They're always wanting to kind of have you here, look at me, look at me. You know, they definitely want to know that you're watching them and you're interested. So when you are able to take that time, just noticing what they're doing right and make sure that you're kind of acknowledging them for it. And then imitating. So this also, maybe this is something new or something a little different, but imitating and describing, I think, are just really great ways, again, to maintain that kind of connection. And I keep bringing up this word connection because that just makes everything easier. So again, it makes this idea of communication, of cooperation, of working on difficult behaviors. I mean, it's all easier to do when your child feels really well connected to you and feels like you think of them as a special person in your life, which of course you do. But I think sometimes in our behaviors, that's can be difficult to show. You know, we're busy and stressed too. So I think being more intentional about showing that you want to be connected can be done by, you know, imitating and describing. So imitating is just you kind of mirroring their behavior. You saw that in the video. The daughter's playing with the dolls and dad's kind of playing with them in the same way. Let's say your child's playing with blocks on the floor. They're building a tower. You start kind of doing the same thing. They're adding blocks to a structure. You just continue to do what they're doing. Maybe you're both drawing on a piece of paper and you're kind of following their lead. So it kind of gives them a little bit of power. You're kind of sharing power in that situation, and that can also build their confidence, but also shows them, again, I'm paying attention to you. I'm noticing what you're doing. You know, I want to be around you. I want to be like you. You know, I'm imitating you. So it just kind of builds that connection that you have together. And then describing. So this can feel kind of strange. You know, in the video, they talked a little bit about how you literally are just describing what they're doing. You're putting the red block on the green block. I see that you're brushing your doll's hair. I see that you are trying to put on this princess dress and that it's hard for you to tie it. You're just kind of describing what it is that they're doing. And this obviously builds language. You're giving them words for the things that they're doing, which they may or may not have. But again, it shows you're paying attention and that you're interested in what they're doing. And then active listening. You know, that just involves being present, being with them. It shows them how to listen. You're kind of teaching them listening skills. You know, I say something, you listen. You say something, I listen. So kind of mirroring and showing that respectful behavior. And I think also sometimes it's hard for adults to really listen to a child. So sometimes, you know, your child will come up and tell you a story and it makes absolutely no sense. You know, it's a silly story that's about, I don't know, someone flying around the room or some crazy story that you know can't possibly be true. But I really encourage you to just go with it, you know, just kind of go with it and take their lead and be excited about it like they are. I mean, what harm does that do? Again, this allows you to be actively listening. You're listening to what they're saying. It makes them feel special that you think what they're saying is important. And it allows that connection between the two of you and showing that you value what they want to talk about, even if it doesn't make sense. It's okay, it doesn't make sense. You know, they trust me. They will learn to leave the fantasy world behind as they grow up, as we all did. But for, you know, these few years, you can kind of entertain them with that. So in your packet again, just kind of giving you tips of what to do when you're trying to increase the communication at home. So meeting at a regular time, again, finding some time in your schedule that you know you can kind of carve out every day, something that will remind you to do it every day. It kind of makes it easier to prioritize when you know it's fitting into this certain place in your schedule. Being in a comfortable place, so kind of making sure that, you know, you are centered, you're feeling pretty grounded, your child's feeling pretty grounded. You know, maybe you think when I get home from school, everything's crazy, we're running all over the place, we're trying to get dinner. It's probably not a good time to try to sit down and have like a good connected conversation, you know, thinking about a time of the day that is just a little bit more relaxed. And then other things to maybe think about is when you're picking up your child from school, you know, asking the teacher what happened that day. What did they do? What activities did they do? What artwork, you know, did they complete? What are the things that they're talking about in their centers? You know, your child's teacher has all this information. They have a ton of things to share with you. They're with your child for how many hours a day? So they definitely know him or her. And they might know him or her in a different way than you do because, you know, they're dealing with your child in a classroom of however 15, 18 other kids, you know, and I guarantee you that they behave differently. So there's definitely some things that you can learn from your child's teacher about how they are in that environment. And, you know, many teachers, I'd say almost all teachers really invite parents to ask questions, and they want to talk and share what they're doing. I think sometimes, you know, they think parents are kind of rushing off to work and coming and picking up their child, but I think they'd love to have a conversation if that's something that you have time for. And then just noticing things around the classroom, or asking your child if they do bring home artwork or something, talking about it. You know, what is this animal? What is this shape? What are you guys talking about at school? What did you learn about butterflies? You know, because I'm sure it's probably connected to a lesson that's a little bit more involved than just, you know, that butterfly picture. And then the do's and don'ts, I kind of outlined them a little bit larger. I like this box because it's a pretty quick reference of things that you can kind of look at really quickly and just remind yourself of. So do kind of offer that undivided attention. Again, you have to decide when you're able to provide that. So you know yourself, you know your schedule. Maybe you're crazy in the mornings. And even though you do have some extra time, it's just not the time for you mentally. You know, you're just too busy. So finding that time where you are also calm, because that will help them to be kind of calm and connected to you. Meeting in a quiet space, you know, you're both kind of regulated and present for each other. Being aware of your tone when you talk to your child. So sometimes, you know, as adults, maybe we're not aware of how we might sound to a child. Or if we get frustrated or scared, you know, it's natural for us to raise our voice. And that can also just be really scary for a child. They maybe don't understand that. They know that you're agitated and you're irritated, and that can also be kind of scary. So making eye contact, getting on your child's level. If they're sitting on the floor playing, you know, sit down with them. And I think for some parents, that alone is a hard thing to do. You know, maybe that's something that wasn't done for you or for them. So, you know, kind of challenging yourself to be more interactive in that way and sharing that space with your child. Reflecting emotion. So noticing if and when they are getting upset. That, oh, well, you seem upset because, I don't know, you couldn't play with this block, or you seem upset because we have to clean up, we have to go. So just reflecting those emotions and using emotional words so they can learn those too. We'll talk a little bit more about that in other lessons too. And asking those specific questions. So instead of how was your day, you know, thinking about different ways you can ask those questions that are going to elicit more conversation. So who did you play with today? What did you build with your blocks? What did you eat for lunch? You know, what did you play with outside? Did you play on the structure? You know, you have a lot of different questions that are a little bit more specific than how was your day, that can kind of create a lot more conversation. And things to keep in mind of maybe avoiding. So not talking when you're upset, and kind of knowing yourself well enough to know that you need to be calm. Not talking when you're busy. That also just leaves you distracted and you're not really connecting, right? There's not that quality to the interaction. Not interrupting your child. So again, kind of modeling and demonstrating the type of conversation you want your child to have with peers, that you want them to have with other adults. So you obviously don't want them interrupting other adults or interrupting peers. So you kind of have to show respect too, and show them the type of conversation you'd like them to have. I think over-explaining is a big one. Again, kiddos from 0 to 5 aren't necessarily, they don't have a whole lot of language. They've only, you know, been around for 4 years. So I think sometimes explaining things to children like they are adults. I mean, it also depends on your child. Some children are just advanced verbally and it's fine. But I think sometimes, especially if your child's exhibiting difficult behaviors, the verbal explanation sometimes isn't as helpful as maybe showing them, or maybe providing some kind of support for some sensory needs they might have that are nonverbal. So I think sometimes just noticing what works for your child And if you notice that when you're explaining a problem or what you want and it's not going over so well, maybe thinking of another approach. And then, trying to avoid correcting your child in how they do something. I think, again, this is hard. I think the intention is good. We want to correct our child and tell them the quote unquote right way or the right answer. But that can kind of hurt their confidence and maybe prevent them from trying new things in the future. If they feel like, well, mom or dad kind of always makes me feel like I'm not doing this the right way. And again, just exploring with them and letting them take the lead as much as possible. Sometimes that's difficult for us to let go of that control, but really allowing that. And I guarantee you're going to get into less power struggles with your child that way. So, oh shoot. I wrote out a scenario and now I'm realizing that it's on this computer. And I have to read it, but I'm screen sharing. How do I do this?
Can you look at it on your phone, or do you want me to screen share?
Well, I can actually here we go. You can look at me while I read it.
There you go.
I think you can. I think that will still work. So, plus the pictures aren't really adding a whole lot to it. That was just there because. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of present like a couple scenarios and just have you think about them. So just kind of picturing them in your own mind of what's going on in these scenes. And I'm sure they're just common things that happen around people's homes when they're trying to get kids ready to do things, and just the different ways of communicating. So, okay, the first scenario, mom might call from another room and she says, Robbie, get ready. We're leaving in 5 minutes. And she continues to clean up the kitchen and kind of get her things together. A few minutes pass. She walks into Robbie's room and he's on the floor playing with toys. He's not dressed, no shoes on. Didn't I ask you to get ready? We're leaving. Please stop with your toys and get dressed. She leaves the room. She continues to get her things together. She checks back in the room in a couple minutes, and he's still on the floor, this time with different toys. She says, that is it. We are running out of time, and you need to get ready. She gets the clothes and his shoes out of the closet and puts them on the bed. Put these on now. Robbie says, but I want to play. I don't want to leave for school yet. Mom responds, well, we don't always get what we want, do we? Hurry up. Robbie gets up reluctantly and starts to get dressed. The parent checks back in a few minutes. Again, she's doing her own thing. Robbie's dressed, but his shirt is inside out and his shoes are on the wrong feet. Come here, hurry up. I have to fix these shoes and shirt. She fixes them. Robbie asks, can I bring the truck with me to play in the car? Mom says, no, because you'll want to take it in with you to school and you can't. He begins crying. Mom says, stop, you're not hurt. You can play with them when you get home. Come on, let's go. Okay, so that's scenario 1. Just kind of thinking about that. I know that's never happened ever in your life. It's never something you've ever done. Okay, so the scenario 2. So parent calls from the kitchen. Robbie, get ready. We're leaving in 5 minutes. So it's kind of this similar scenario up front. She continues to clean up the kitchen, gets things together. A few minutes later, she walks into the room. He's on the floor playing with the toys. Not dressed, no shoes on. Didn't I ask you to get ready? We're leaving. Please stop with your toys and get dressed. She leaves the room. Just the same as the other scenario. She continues to get her things together. She checks back in the room in a couple minutes. He's still on the floor with different toys. Okay, this is where it's different. So mom takes a deep breath. Quietly and slowly, she walks to where Robbie is and sits down on the floor with him. She remains quiet for a minute. She asks him, what are you playing over here? Robbie responds, I'm building roads for my truck to go on. Mom says, you're really working hard on this. I can see you don't want to stop building. Would it help if you could leave your roads where they are so you can come back to this later? You don't have to put them all away, but we do have to leave to go to school. Robbie stops and thinks. Mom moves closer and makes eye contact. You can leave these roads in place. She shows him which ones and come back to building later. I'll even help you build. Now you need to get dressed and put your shoes on so we can go. Robbie puts the truck down and goes to the bed to put on his clothes. Mom comes back to the room and sees he's dressed with shoes on the wrong feet and shirt inside out. You got dressed just like I asked you to. Thank you. She gets on the child's level and smiles. Can I help you put your shoes on the right feet so they don't hurt you? She waits for his answer. Robbie says, okay. Mom fixes his shoes. Robbie, I really like that you listened so well and stopped your play to get dressed so we could go. Now we will be on time. Thank you. So, what do we think about these different scenarios? So I think I just wanted to share, oh my goodness, it's so wacky. You know, in the first scenario, we really heard, this is like the only picture of a mom that I could find. It looks so crazy, doesn't it? It's like not a real person, but I just think it's funny. But, you know, I think all jokes aside, even though this is a silly picture, I think, you know, that mom, her intentions are really good. You know, they need to go to school. You know, they need to move it along here. And I think that all the things that she did are very normal and very normal responses. And, you know, if this is something you've done in the past, or maybe you did it today, it's not a bad thing. You know, I don't want you to feel any type of guilt about it or like it's the wrong thing. It's not. I think it's the way to think about it is that if you're having an issue, if you feel like you're communicating with your child and it's not going well, you know, that there are just more tools to try. That's simply it. I think that, you know, this mom really she wanted things on her timeline, you know, so it's, again, you're kind of turning it into a little bit of a power struggle, where she's saying, this is what I need you to do it now. And, you know, kind of without acknowledging what it is that he's wanting to do. And, you know, there's a whole conversation involved with kind of sharing control and kind of giving up a little bit of control with a child, which is, you could have a whole lesson on that. But I think just recognizing it is something you get into a lot with your child, this kind of power struggle, and that maybe trying a different way. You know, the other thing that this mom did in the first scenario was she kind of left him alone, didn't she? She came in, she checked, she said what she wanted, she left. She was putting her stuff together. Came in, checked, did her own thing again. You know, so she's kind of, instead of providing that extra instruction, instead of providing that little bit extra support to get the behavior compliance, she's kind of just letting it go the way it goes. And then finally at the end, when he didn't have his shoes on right and the shirt on, you know, not correctly, just no acknowledgement for the fact that he got dressed. So again, I asked him to get dressed. He did. You know, did he do it perfectly? No. You know, we don't do things perfectly, period. Especially kiddos, you know, they're still learning. So definitely acknowledging what it is that you asked for before, you know, maybe helping them out with their shoes. And again, I think in the second scenario, purposefully, I kind of put it in there that she fixes his shoes. So I think I agree that's kind of a safety issue. He could clearly trip and hurt himself. But like a backwards shirt, whatever, you know, I mean, who's that hurting, I guess? You know, just kind of asking yourself, if you're letting your child try new things and do things for themselves, sometimes they're not going to do it perfectly, and that's okay. You know, as long as it's not a safety issue. And I think really that second mom, one of the other things that she did was she intentionally calmed herself down first. So she got frustrated. She'd asked him to do it twice. Nothing happened. She takes a breath and I'm assuming in her mind, she's thinking, okay, I got to try something else now. This isn't working. You know, I'm going to go approach him. I'm going to get on his level. And just that connection and that kind of that pause where she asks him what he's doing and kind of recognizes her best guess. I think you're upset because you don't want to lose these roads that you're building. How about if you don't have to put those roads away, you can leave them, you know, so kind of recognizing what is his need in this moment and how can I also kind of compromise with what I need him to do, which is get dressed and leave. So hopefully you can see kind of the difference and that was a little bit helpful. And then finally, our checkup B in our worksheets is all about school, or just thinking about, again, even if your child's not in school, I think some of these questions are really applicable. So just thinking about how much you know about, if your child's in school, you know, how much you know about what goes on at school. And if your child's not in school, or maybe if they're cared for by another family member, you know, while you're at work or whatever, knowing what goes on in that environment that your child is in for most of the day, so even if it's not a preschool environment, if it's grandma's house or whatever, maybe you're kind of assuming things about what goes on there, but you might not actually know. So, some of these questions I think really point to that. What new skills and ideas did your child learn in the past month? Again, these are great questions for teachers. Did your child have a good time at school this week? Who does he or she like to play with? What activities do they like to do best? Is anything scaring your child about school? Asking the child's teacher, is there anything that he or she is hesitant about? Do you notice any challenging behaviors? What are some things I could maybe work on at home? I think those are all good conversations. And then finally, do you know what the classroom rules are? Or again, if your child's not in the classroom, but maybe just going to grandma's house or uncle's house or something like that to, be watched during the day, what are the expectations that are there? And are they different than or what at home? So then again, you can kind of pinpoint maybe if you're seeing any challenging behaviors, it could just be those different expectations in those different environments. For a 3-4-year-old, it's hard to kind of learn, what do I need to do in this environment versus another environment? Why is it okay for me to do this over here, but not over here? So having that conversation can really be helpful. Again, these are good questions to go over with your partner. Maybe they pick up your child more often than you do. I don't know, it kind of just depends on how your family runs, and who those important people are that you can ask the things that they know about your child, and share the things that you know. And then again, finally, it's just talking about getting more involved with the school, or again, getting more involved with that caregiver. If your child's at daycare, if they go to a home, childcare provider or someone you trust, getting to know what that routine is like. And then just having that open line of communication between you and whomever that other entity is that's watching your child all the time. Because it's always helpful to be consistent and on the same page in those things. So our tip and activity cards, those are also, we're sending that link to you in the email. So these are just a few of them. We'll kind of look at a couple of them. So again, since we're focusing on communication, you're just focusing on, kind of engaging with your child, sharing information about their day. You can ask them to kind of choose one of the cards. And, these are printable, so you can ask them to choose one of the cards, and then that's the one that you're going to work on that day, setting a timer and doing the activity together. So making conversation cards. These cards will help your child use words and phrases or sentences to inform, direct, and ask questions. Again, these are for older kids. So if your child's around 4 or 5, I'm sure you could have this conversation with them. How they start conversations, how they ask their friends to play. If your child's a little bit younger than that, I don't know if that's the most appropriate. Again, having a conversation, encouraging them to kind of alternate between speaker and listener roles. So I think a great way to do this is maybe telling a story. So making up a story. Sometimes, when we sit with kids and we read a story, which is great, it's wonderful, to read to your kids. But sometimes it's fun to just make up a story. So instead of choosing a book, you kind of sit in bed or sit wherever you normally read and just make up a story. Just whatever comes to your imagination. Oh, there once was a cat who lived in a house with a mouse. I don't know. Yeah, make up anything. Especially your 3, 4, and 5-year-old. They don't care. They don't care that they've never heard this story before. In fact, I guarantee you they will love it, because then you get to add a sentence, they get to add a sentence, and you just kind of get to run with the story. And you're modeling that conversation of listening and then responding. I guarantee they will enjoy it. Oh, what happened? And if you have, a couple, some older kids, you can encourage them to use certain phrases. Or just kind of allow them to use their imaginations. What do you think might happen if this happened? Talking about an event that occurred, you're walking the dog, and what what would have happened if the dog got off the leash, you know, and again, it's kind of a way to start this story and this conversation. You can talk about the different possibilities. I think it's also a good way if you are, you know, if your child is exhibiting challenging behaviors, that you can talk about the different solutions, you know. So I know that when you were at school, you had an issue and you were taking toys from friends, and, you know, maybe what are some other solutions to this problem? What can you do? What words can you use to ask to play with the toys? Talking about events that you both experienced. I know another great way is that shells, bookmaking that A-Trip does. I believe there will be another session or another session on how to do shells, but it's basically, you know, engaging in activity with your child and taking pictures while you do it, and then creating a story out of those pictures. So that's another great way to kind of communicate and share and talk about that shared experience. That the video they're referring to there, the adult child play interactions video, that's part of the curriculum that this is from, so we don't have that. I think the other thing that's good about some of these examples is just like not being very complex in your question. So right there, did John tell the teacher, versus asking, did John tell the teacher? Did the teacher get mad? What did the other kids do? Sometimes we're using a lot of big, long sentences and kids can get confused by those. And again, we talked about before, so kind of more specific questions. Did you finish building the house with Maria? Versus, what did you do today? So again, that's a very vague question. Once you know, kind of who your child likes to play with, you can ask more specific questions. Stopping and listening to what they're saying, repeating back, what you heard. Again, there was a brief clip in that video talking about that, but let's say your child excitedly runs up to you and starts telling you about, I don't know, their friend at school and what they played. Just reflect back to them what they're saying. Oh, so you got to build the blocks with Joe today. That was really exciting. Oh, you got to build a tower. Did you put on the blocks first, or did he put on the blocks first? So you're kind of engaging them in this conversation, and by reflecting it, they know that you've heard them. And again, just active listening. We can do this with adults. You can practice these things, having that eye contact, nodding, smiling, responding to what they're saying, listening to what they're saying and responding to it. A lot of times as adults, we're just providing a lot of direction for kids. Do this, do that, don't do this. And, again, sometimes a child is telling us a story and we're kind of like halfway listening because it's a silly story. It doesn't make sense to an adult. But engaging with your child and acting like it does make sense and that it's really interesting to you just makes them feel so special. Touching, holding a hand, putting your arm around them, all of these things are kind of things you can do to let them know that you're listening and what they're saying is important. I'm talking about emotions. If they're having difficult emotions, labeling them, using those words. And then there's a space here for kind of your own ideas. And then the activity cards come after this. So these are just different activities you can try. Showing me what happens next. They have some sequence cards that are involved that, I think there's 4 steps to bedtime. You can kind of show what happens next. I mean, there's just so many different things that you can communicate with your child about. I mean, just endless amount of things. You're watching a movie, talk about what's happening in the movie, pause the movie, say what could happen next, tell me a story about what you think is going to happen. There's so many ways to talk to your child. And I think sometimes parents might get stuck on this idea that you have to be talking about academic things or naming shapes or naming numbers or naming colors or, all these things that I hear parents and teachers do, which are fine. There's nothing bad about that. But I think just engaging in normal conversation about, gosh, all these things your kids love to do, play with dolls, build blocks, watch SpongeBob SquarePants. I don't know. I mean, whatever it is that they want to talk about, talking to them just makes them. So those are some of the activities and tip cards that you can, again, you have a link to that. You can click through them. Please let me know if any of them, you have any questions about any of them, or you want to or if you've modified some of them, to work better for you and your family. And then finally, our homework for this week. And you'll also notice my homework's often the same. I pretty much, I think every week will always ask you to try to make that time, that 5 to 10 minutes, that's one-on-one with your child. I ask that every week because I know it's so hard to do. I know it's so hard to find that time. But again, just being intentional about it and really, I mean, write it into your planner, make it a priority. Getting down on his or her level, playing with them, sitting on the floor, thinking of yourself for that brief moment in time, that 5 to 10 minute period, more like a peer than a parent. And that's not to say that in most of the other times of the day that you're definitely the parent in taking on that role, but it's helpful and provides good connection with your child if you kind of behave as though you're a peer for brief periods of time. They can feel more connected to you. Listening, and responding. Again, even if the story is crazy, even if it's really weird, go with it. Take their lead for those 5 or 10 minutes. I promise it won't hurt. Writing down 2 or 3 specific questions you can ask your child, putting it on your fridge, those things that you want to know about school or you want to know about the other environments that they're in. Talk. Okay, so just like that first study that we talked about when we first started this lesson, talking is so important. Just literally the number of times that you're speaking is important and it's meaningful. So gosh, my goodness, talk about anything. Talk about your day and, involve your child in it. Find ways to just make conversation and just talk. It's just really hard sometimes for me. Sometimes I'll see families out and about, and just silent on their phones. That's what we all do. But just that engaged time is so important. Notice your child doing the right thing. And then just talking more to other adults, just practicing having that conversation. Maybe that's something that you don't normally do. I know for a lot of people, it's pretty normal. You talk to your friends and family, but some people, maybe it's not. Maybe you're just a quiet person, or maybe your partner is a quiet person. And, you're just trying to kind of practice that engagement and that conversation so that you become more comfortable with it. And it's something that you're able to do with your child without any anxiety. And that's it for our communication lesson. Hold on, let me click out. Why is this screen so crazy? So let me know if you ladies have any questions. I think you're both still muted. Maybe you stepped away from your computers for a moment, which is fine.
There, we're here.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, I'm right here too.
Oh, good. So did you have any questions, Maria, or comments or thoughts?
Well, I loved it. I'm gonna be trying it with my nephew. He's 3 years old. I think he's better than trying it with my daughter for sure. So I'm just gonna be talking a lot, which I like to do already.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and he's very social too. So I guess both of us will enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, he's a toddler too.
Yeah, he's a toddler. He has a huge vocabulary. He already knows how to speak so many things, both in Spanish and English. So it's going to be great to try out these tips.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, usually when I see a lot of kids here and kind of consult with them, and when they have a lot of language and a lot of, a huge vocabulary, it's like, I already know, like, oh, parents are talking to them at home, or they're in an environment where people are really, creating that conversation, and it allows them to kind of build their vocabulary. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I really liked it. I'm excited for the new sections, and I'm super excited for next Wednesday too. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you for joining us.
I know, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
So you think you'll be able to come next week? Is this a good time for you?
Yep, I'll be here next week.
All right.
Okay, good. All right. Well, email me in the meantime if you have any questions or comments. And Naomi is gonna, if you want to rewatch the video, she's gonna edit it, and I'm sure I have to add the beginning part that I did not record.
Okay, I'll look for it now.
And then Maria, are you a part of the Google community yet?
Of the what?
Google community?
I'm not sure. I gotta ask Kalei.
Oh, okay. Do you have a Gmail account?
I do.
Can you give it to me? I'll try add you again. I know Sue. Wait, Sue, did you already add her or try to?
Yeah, I asked everyone. So I sent another email. I mean, this was maybe last week. I sent an invite to the Google community, which should pop up for you to your email, your ALEZISS11, at Gmail.
That's it.
Yeah, so then I'm assuming that you'd click on that to join the community, but I invited everyone, but I can re-invite and see if that works.
Okay, sounds good. Just to make sure.
Yeah, so it's like, do you use Facebook or Instagram at all?
I use Facebook sometimes.
Okay, so Google Community is like kind of like Facebook in the sense that you subscribe to things, you connect with people. Instead of friends, it's called connections or circles. And we have our own community that has just the parents that are involved with our parenting groups. So you guys can keep in touch and ask questions, and that's where we post stuff. And it's just another resource to connect while you're offline.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Please invite me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll look forward to it, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.